Minute of what?
According to this, we're past due.
It's
Past due.
9:01.
Huh?
9:01.
You have 901 for this clock is slow.
It's past 9:01. Might be 9:02.
Oh boy.
We're almost 9:02.
We're live.
I thought they had a very nice one. Someone said about
Security campaign?
Rabbi Dreyfus. Rabbi Yaakov Dreyfus. Someone said about him, he's the man of the hour. You have to start timely. Man of the hour.
As long as we start before 9:59, we're still within the hour.
Okay.
There you go. That was mine.
My apologies. This is the yeshiva's new copier, so I see some of the things come out darker.
I was going to say there's a lot of words here.
Yeah. Okay, stuff to adjust. Okay, one other announcement before we begin. As of next Sunday, there won't be a share here. I hope to be in New York, but Bez Hashem, the following week we should be okay. Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, especially this week. There are multiple Bali Simcha in the room, grandfathers, fathers of Talmidim in Yeshiva, graduates. So I'd like to wish Mazel Tov to everybody. There's other relatives, Alan I see here in the room, that hosted many Bachrim for meals. So, great uncle, right? Great uncle, the graduate. Yeah. So, so today's share, entitled "The Honor of the Sefer Torah," we chose the topic for three reasons. Those who were here last week will say, "Okay, Rabbi, it's easy. Last week you spoke about an Aron Kodesh, so today you're speaking about Sefer Torah. I get it. Okay, yeah. We don't. The official rule is each week is its own independent topic. Okay, we see a connection. A second reason, which was actually hit at home, I was discussing some of the topics with a certain Rav. And Rabbanim have a good way of making drashas. I won't give you his full drasha just yet. But in this week's Parsha, you do have Ahi ben So Ha'aron. Talks about when the Sefer Torah and the Aron was traveling in the Midbar. So, okay, that's going to be part of the halachos that we want to talk about today. The honor of the Sefer Torah, there are many areas of kavod of the Sefer Torah. Particularly, I do want to talk about the process of honoring the Sefer Torah when the Sefer Torah comes out of the Aron, when it moves. That's a topic I would like to talk about. So that's a second reason to pick this topic. But thirdly, something happened to me, maybe not just myself, but when we had the schus, took some Talmidim to Eretz Yisrael, and we're davening by the Kosel, I noticed something which doesn't usually happen in most shuls, but it happened over there. I'll describe to you the scene. I was sitting inside the Kosel, the day we were leaving, davening, saying Tehillim, and all of a sudden, it seems, actually that day was Yom Yerushalayim, a very, very busy day. So they probably had, Mordechai, maybe you could give Eidos, right? They probably had many, many minyanim. Mordechai, you were there for Nates. But they had many minyanim, probably a bigger crowd than usual. And it was a Monday. So they had a lot of laning at the Kosel. So they have these Aron Kodeshes. They have many, many Aron Kodeshes by the Kosel. And one unique aspect is they're on wheels. So they could literally move the Aron Kodesh from this part of the plaza to that part of the Kosel, not plaza, but place where they daven by the Kosel. They can move it indoors, outdoors. So we were there, it was a little before Mincha time. So I assume already by then the chachrises were finishing up. And the workers by the Kolso were moving these Aron Kodeshes. Kadashim, show the exact. They were moving them from the outside into the inside. Huh? Right? And the question I had as I was sitting there saying to him, should I be standing up when an Aron Kodesh basically passes in front of me? I know the halach what to do if a Sefer Torah passes in front. But what does one do when the entire Aron Kodesh passes through? Interesting question. Technically, it could happen outside the Kol Zone, other shuls where they have movable Aron Kodeshes, but they're not so common. Not so common. Young Israel, do they have one? Between the rooms, they don't have a movable Aron Kodesh.
Well, they do, but it's never moved.
It's never moved, yeah.
So that is a question I've perplexed a few people already with it. And I'd like to go through different halachas. Perhaps we'll touch and get back to the shaila. But in general, I think there's some interesting halachas to learn about honoring the Sefer Torah when the Sefer Torah moves. Yes.
You're in a Shiva house and they bring in the Aron to hold the Torah.
Right. I mean, for the first time.
Does the person sing Shiva have to stand up?
Right. Right.
If you're in Orlando at the school and your brother-in-law takes one to bring to some other villa,
Okay.
they have like portable.
I'm glad it's not just these are two circumstances. The more common circumstance brought up was a movable aron for Rahman Son for people sitting shiva, and that you do find in halacha. It's really not so pashut. Halacha discusses bringing a Sefer Torah to a person versus a person going to a Sefer Torah. So there's heterim for an aval to bring a Sefer Torah to him so he could have a minyan in his home during Shiva. Other situations actually not so simple. Careful what I say. But there are wonderful chesed organizations in what has become the biggest Jewish pop-up city in America, called Orlando, where they have minyanim and they transport Sefer Torah. Yeah. But none of them really have Sefer Torah on wheels. That's okay. But same basic shaila. So it's interesting. Some of the halachas of honoring a Sefer Torah are really not so clear-cut in the Shulchan Aruch itself. The Shabrua expands a little more on it. So that's why I want to begin. So if you look at, this is Aruch Chaim, it's in Kuf Mem Vav. The halach over there talks about, Mechaber writes, Ein tzarich lamo mu'umad be'esh shekon b'Torah. Mechaber says one does not have to stand during Kriyas Torah. We'll begin with the halachas of Kriyas Torah, and then we'll talk about Hotzava Hachnasa. So for Kriyas Torah, the Mechaber writes right up, you don't have to stand. The Ramah, of course, adds, Yesh machmirim va'omdim. There are those that are machmir and stand. The Chain also Maram, Rami Rudenberg would stand. They quote a Mordechai. So anyone who's paid attention in shoals, right? You have this phenomenon. You'll have some people standing during Kriyas Torah, some people sitting. They are both legitimate opinions over here in the Shulchan Aruch. Mechaber writes, Beferish, one does not have to stand. The Ramah adds, Yesh machmirim to do that. Now, Pashup Shat, before I saw the Mishnah Berurah, I would have thought it's an element of Kavod Torah, simple Kavod Torah. That, or even talks about that they even needs to learn Torah standing because of Kavod Torah. So similarly, Kriyas Torah, perhaps it's a reason to stand. Well, maybe let's read the Mishnah Berurah on that first. I'm first going to read the Tzad 2 stand. Then we'll go backwards. So let's read the Mishnah Berurah on Yud Tes. I think it's just interesting to see. Yesh machmir ba'omdim. Kasav apri chadash v'agra. The Pri Chadash and the Gra right. The Ikka Kasvar Rishona. I mean, halacha l'maisa, the main thing is like the first opinion, which says one does not need to stand for Kriyas HaTorah. You could sit. The Chei Nagu, and they write that's the minhag. However, the Bach, Kasav, the Gama Aramo de Medina Shari, Maram Iranenberg would also agree, Meikar Adin, it's mutter for one to sit during Kriyas HaTorah. Again, I'll put a little asterisk. This might be besides, Aseres Adibros. So others we all share different times that we have a minute to stand. That itself is a discussion. If the default is sitting, why do we stand for those? Okay. El Disrile the Royal Hadar Lo Amud. The Shita of the Ramah, which is Marami Rodenberg, is he says it's best to do a hiddur and to stand. This is a very interesting reason. Because a person, it should enter his mind. When you're hearing Kriyas HaTorah, every Shabbos, you're hearing Laning, you're hearing Parshas Baaloscha. In your mind, you should view it, wow, this is Maimon Har Sinai. And the Mishnah Berurah explains, over Har Sinai, by Har Sinai, nobody was sitting. Everyone was standing. Kedeksiv, Anochi Amud ben Hashem, Uveinechem, Pasuk's mashma, that the people were standing. So, very interesting idea. The reason for standing for Kriyas HaTorah isn't just in general, it's covered for the Torah. But the Mishnah Berurah writes a more specific reason. That we should view Kriyas HaTorah as Maimon Har Sinai. As we're hearing these words for the first time, just like we did in Har Sinai. And therefore, by Har Sinai we stood, so we also stand for Kriyas HaTorah. And most people don't approach Kriyas HaTorah as, okay, here comes Har Sinai, week 1. We do it every week. We get used to it. We get used to the Balkare. So it just becomes part of davening. But it's interesting, the Mishnah Berurah's description of the reason to stand is because one should feel as if it's Maimon Har Sinai. By Har Sinai, everyone stood. Now he does, of course, write, Mishu ish chalosh, v'kashu olamot. Unfortunately, if a person's weak, it's hard for him to stand. But yizein daiti misheves, and by doing that, his mind loses focus. Then you should sit. Okay. He also brings down, even the Marami Rodenberg, and that's what Mr. Berurah says, that you only have to stand for the Kriyas HaTorah, but especially if there's, Ben Gavra Gavra, there's Mishaberach, the Gabbai walks from one side of the shul to the other to get the next Ola. Between that, you're allowed to sit. So now I'm going to get to in a second. So, the first step, I just wanted to introduce the concepts. This, I believe, is beyond basic level Kavod HaTorah, but Kriyas HaTorah itself is like Maimon Har Sinai. And that one needs, there is a tzad, be careful what I say. Halacha l'maisa, one does not need to stand. But this shita of the Marami Rodenberg, the chumrah, the hiddur, to stand, is based on the reenactment of Maimon Har Sinai. So even if you do sit for Kriyas HaTorah, you could still have this idea in mind. You know what? The Kriyas HaTorah itself is like Har Sinai. Okay, I can't stand. Yes?
When the Ola recites the Kriyas HaTorah, are you required to stand?
Excellent point. That's what I'm about to get to. Now, I'll read that. Let's start in the Mishnah Berurah now on top. The first shita was that one does not have to stand. And he says, that means afil omdim ala bima. Even technically speaking, the people standing by the bima, the gabbai, the one next to him, mi'ikar adin, they don't need to stand.
You ever seen it?
Never seen it,
You're about,
right?
We're about
Get
to buy
a little
specialty
stool for the
chair.
gabbai, right? Mr. Mayor, if it can have your name on it, right?
Rabbi doesn't have to worry when he goes up, he doesn't lose his seat.
Right.
It's not happening.
Right? It could be a new dedication for a shul, a gabbai stool. Now, he says, Mishabur continues, Sefer Torah, El Adam Noso. You only have to stand for Sefer Torah. I'm going to get to this in a moment more. Is only when a person is carrying it. That when it's in its spot, you don't have to stand. And he writes, however, the dafka koriva olo Torah tzricha mamod. The person getting the aliyah, the person laning, those people have to stand. Fortunately, you have Haxel about a person who's in a wheelchair. Okay, but the person laning and the person getting the aliyah, they have to stand. We mentioned the gabayim, people on the side, the ikar adin do not have to stand. But he does write. I'll jump to the next Mishnah. I'll circle back. He says, "Uvashas amiyos baruch v'aniyas baruch Hashem uvarach alom v'od l'kuli alma tzricha mamod do davar shebekdusha." What was brought up, Ed? What you just brought up, when the person gets the aliyah, makes the brachos, those brachos are considered a davar shebekdusha, and just by regular baruch hu, before birchas kriyas shema, the halacha is that one has to stand, right? Baruch Hu Hashem Amavarach, everyone in the shul stands. So too by an aliyah, everyone has to stand. So too by an aliyah, everyone has to stand. So,
Stand or just a little bump?
okay, we could debate, how much standing does one have to do. Maybe we'll see that a little more. But that's for sure. But when the Torah is in its spot, even though the Torah is open, the Ikar Adin, one does not have to stand for that. Now, the Chafetz Chaim continues. Let's start reading from Vidah. It's 3 lines into the wide lines from the top of that Mishabra. Vidah. Shebeshah, the Be'esha Nosen also. When they carry a Sefer Torah, right? That means practically carrying it from the Aron to the Bima, from the Bima to the Aron. We know in yeshiva here, on a daily basis, this yeshiva currently has 3 minyanim, happening for the most part simultaneously. All right? Okay. Mordechai Dreyfus, of course, corrected me. It is really there are 5 because on this campus, we also have the middle school, has an Ashkenaz and a Sfarad minyan, right? So technically there are 5 minyanim going on at the same time. But let's talk about how much usage our Aron gets. I was only talking about 3. There are 3 minyanim going on. Our davening in the morning could get a little hectic on Mondays and Thursdays, between the person taking out the Sefer Torah for the Sephardic minyan, the person taking out the Sefer Torah for the auxiliary minyan. There are multiple Sefer Torah going back and forth. So really, it's important to know these halachas is that any time a Sefer Torah moves, one has to stand, which is part of the reason. Also, the people taking out the Sefer Torah have to be knowledgeable of that halacha, and they shouldn't come to take out the Sefer Torah while the main minyan is in the middle of Kriyas Shema. Get everybody up in the middle of Kriyas Shema. Those are the things that always are the most abrupt. You're in the middle of davening, and you're looking in your siddur, all of a sudden you hear everything in the chair get up. Like, what happened? They got the Shemona Esrei ready?
And not during Asher.
Yeah,
Middle
so
of Seder.
it's tricky. So again, the halacha is be'esh and oso, when they carry a Sefer Torah, chayiv lamod lefaneha, you have to stand up for the Sefer Torah. The chasam enough till the point it's out of your eyesight. Or they bring it to its spot. So once they take the Sefer Torah out of the Aron, until, let's say, it passes your eyesight, like for example here, when they're transferring a Sefer Torah from the base medrash to a different room, as long as it goes out the door or even out of your eyesight, at that point you can sit down. Or they're bringing the Sefer Torah in the normal case to the bima. Once it hits the bima, one is allowed to sit down. Now it's important when there are 2 Sefer Torah, you have to make sure that both people carrying it or sitting. And sometimes at the second Sefer Torah, if the guy is not on top of his game, and the second guy is not sure where to sit, and they have to hock to get him a chair, so then, so the guy could dilly-dally, this, like, sit down. The whole tzivor is waiting for you to sit down. So have a seat. Now, I thought the Dirshu Mishabura did a fantastic job over here. On this one line of the Mishabura, their Medai come out every single word here with very relevant, important halachas. Now, firstly, what's the background? What's the basis of this halacha? Where does this halacha come from? That one is responsible to stand when the Sefer Torah is moving. So I know the Darshanim was saying, "Vayhi ben so Aaron, vayama Moshe kuma." When the Aaron moves, Moshe said, "Stand." Okay, you have to know the rest of the pasuk. Kuma Hashem. Okay, but that is not the makor for the halacha of standing for the Sefer Torah. However, it's much more than that. Rav Moshe Feinstein, they bring down here in the Dirshu, Rav Moshe Feinstein holds the chiyuv to stand for a Sefer Torah when it's moving is a chiyuv d'oraisa. Right? We talk about it on a daily basis. How many mitzvahs d'oraisa does a person get? Okay? So you have a Kriya Shema, Tefillin, Limud Torah, but d'oraisas are, there's something to appreciate. Moshe says, you're in shul on a Monday or a Thursday, Sefer Torah comes out of the Aron, that idea of standing is a mitzvah to say d'oraisa. Very interestingly, what's the source? It's not our remez from this expression. So Zakter of Moshe, look what he writes. It's brought down, V'chiyav zeh kasa Rav Moshe, that's d'oraisa. Sha'arei mekor adin hu mikal v'chomer. The source of the din of standing for a Sefer Torah is a kal v'chomer. Imim nelom deha omdim mipneha lo koshekain. The Gemara debates the sources of standing up for a Sefer Torah and compares and contrasts it with the chiyuv to stand up for a Talmid Chacham. So here the Gemara says, if we stand up for a Talmid Chacham, the person who learns the Torah, shouldn't we certainly stand up for the Sefer Torah? Why do we stand up for a Talmid Chacham? Because a Talmid Chacham has within him Torah. Okay, you could say he's a living Sefer Torah. Okay, so certainly the Sefer Torah itself, one has to stand for. Brings that the Talmud of the Brisker Rav, the Imam Bracha, had the same idea. So it's a chiyuv d'oraisa. Think about it. We appreciate the concept. One has to stand for Kavod Torah for a Talmid Chacham. So Kal v'chomer, a person has to stand for a Sefer Torah. Also from here you see the importance of the relationship to give Kavod Torah both scenarios. One feeds off the other. You appreciate what a Talmid Chacham is. You appreciate more so what a Sefer Torah is. Appreciate what a Sefer Torah is, it could also help you come to appreciate more what a Talmid Chacham is. That's part of Hilchas Sefer Torah, Kavod Sefer Torah. So that's one madrega. You see, it's important for a person to always stand when the Sefer Torah is coming out of the Aron. First and foremost, that's tremendous kavod. Second point, they bring here, Va'af be'emtza halimud. Person's in the middle of learning. Like we said before, there could be many circumstances where you're in a base medrash, in the middle of learning, and someone went to take out a Sefer Torah. Right? There's some bar mitzvah boy wants to practice his laning from a Sefer Torah. So, right, it happened Friday, right? So they come into the base medrash. Now, I usually tell people try to do that, not during Seder, so you won't stare the whole base medrash. But if a Sefer Torah does come out of the Aron during learning, one would have to stand up, even if it means pausing one's learning, for Kavod Sefer Torah. This fits well. We talked about last week the importance of Kavod Torah can sometimes trump the mitzvah of Limud Torah. Right? Good hamshach. Now, another point. A fantastic job here. Now, what happens if a person himself is moving? In other words, I understand if I'm sitting and the Sefer Torah is moving, so then I stand up for honor of the Sefer Torah. What happens if I'm moving? I happen to be walking the shul, and the Sefer Torah is coming out. So, similarly, one would think, okay, if I'm walking in the Sefer Torah, I'm already standing, so I'm good to go. Now, quickly get to your seat. I'm quite late. I'm first getting to my seat now. So, one would think, I'm standing already, Sefer Torah is moving, I'm good to go. Says the halacha, the Sefer Torah over Lefanov, they bring here from the Aruch HaShulchan, Shetzarach Lamod B'Mkomo Ad Sheyaver Sefer Torah. According to halacha, honoring the Sefer Torah isn't just the act of standing. To go from the sitting position to the standing position, that's a means of honoring the Sefer Torah. That's not the only way to do it. If you're already standing and moving, the correct thing to do would be to stand in your place. I've saw this multiple times from my Rebbe, Reb Hanoch. Fascinating. This doesn't just apply to Hilchos Kavod Sefer Torah. It applies to other Dvarim Shebekdusha. I would see him. Let's say he walked in or into a room while they were saying Kaddish. So normally what you see people do is, okay, they just continue, they're standing already, they continue walking to their spot where they're going, and they answer, Kaddish. Really, that's not correct. If you want to be Mechabed the Kaddish by standing, right, Ed mentioned before, for Baruch Hu, for Davar Shebekdusha, one needs to stand. The correct thing to do would be to pause, stand in your place. That's another form of honoring. When I'm moving and all of a sudden the king passes by, you stop.
What if you're already standing in your place when it comes out?
Then you're perfect. Just, yeah. And at that point, you just answer Kaddish. Yeah. I have heard stories of Gedolim that they noticed, I think they say about Rav Scheinberg, he dafka would, if he saw somebody he wanted to be mechabed by standing, he would dafka make sure to sit first so he could get back up to stand. But you're right. Once you're in the circumstance of standing and being in place, yeah, I'm not sure there's anything more you could do. Yes.
Can we learn anything from the Hilchos of Kavod HaMelech to apply to this?
Yeah.
So, isn't it true that with a Melech, if the Melech's walking, then you're supposed to walk with?
To follow. Okay, we're going to get to that in a moment. Very good. Very good. Yes. Okay, so let me just do a quick review. I want to say one more halakha on this, and then we'll go to that next area and see if we can make it back to my original shaila. But we'll see. We might need some more information. But again, when one is the halacha of Kavod Sefer Torah is when a Sefer Torah moves, one has to stand until either the Sefer Torah is out of your sight line, being taken to another room, you can't see it anymore, or the Sefer Torah is resting in a spot. One has to stand. We saw that that's a chiyuv d'oraisa, comparable to the halachas of honoring a Talmid Chacham. We saw that if one is already in transit and the Sefer Torah is passing, the way to honor it is to stop. Stop, stand in your place until the Sefer Torah passes. Now, and even this halachas of honoring the Sefer Torah, of standing, would even apply in the middle of one's learning. Now, we said, additionally, that it's even if it's at the corner of your eye, you could be thinking about it, you're sitting in the back of a base medrash, and the corner of one's eye, one sees a Sefer Torah. So, okay, even for that, one's not supposed to make believe he didn't see it. He's supposed to stand. And I see they bring from the Brisker Rav that he compares it to the din of a Rebbe Muvak, one's Rebbe where he learned most of his Torah from, that the idea of standing, even if he's far away, we talked about this really a little bit last week, where it may not be an issue of the person receiving the kavod, noticing it, but you have to do it not because of kavod, but out of mora, out of fear. You're supposed to have a certain amount of awe, trepidation. So that's what makes it by a Sefer Torah, even if it's far away, quote unquote, the Sefer Torah is not going to see it. But you yourself have to have that awe and reverence to stand up. Now, these are part one halachas we find over here, basically off the Mishabura in Siman Kuf Mem Vav. If you look a little bit later in the Shulchan Aruch, there's Aruch Chaim Siman Kuf Mem Tes. So there, it's a short siman, only has one sef. That once it's Kriyas HaTorah, that siman talks about, people are not supposed to leave the shul till they put away the Sefer Torah. Very important halacha. Now, people always look to make a quick exit or to step out. Once they bring in the Sefer Torah, part of Kavod Torah says one should not leave the shul until they put back the Sefer Torah. Obviously, in ideal situations. But at the end of those halachas in the Ramah, it's really the second half of a Ramah. Right. The Ramah writes, okay. Nowadays, where they keep the Sefer Torah inside the shul in an Aron Kodesh, mitzvah l'chol mi she'over lefanav l'avoso, person is supposed to escort it until the Aron where they put it there. And this is a process, honestly, you don't see so much. Really, ideally, this is true about everybody. He writes, "V'china golel," the person who does Hagba, "Yel chag ziv Torah avnei Aron, actually in Sefer Torah Mekomo, v'china g'man bia Sefer Torah." But really, this applies to everybody. I remember once hearing years ago, Rabbi Yisrael Reisman make a point that also he observed that many people do not practice this halacha. It's beferish Ramah, no one's arguing on it. That when the Sefer Torah comes out of the Aron, ideally speaking, everyone should not just stand up in their place. Really, as you mentioned before, they should really move forward towards the Aron. And so too in the reverse, when the Sefer Torah goes back, not just enough for one to stand. That's step one of kavod. But step two is to follow it. Now the Sefer Torah moves, so you malava it, you escort it back to the Aron. Now the one thing I could hear, which is tricky, you have a big shul, you have lots of people, and you may not have room in the aisles for everyone to go back. And it'll just be, you sometimes find these situations. I remember in one recently, everyone's smushed together, everyone's trying to get to the living Sefer Torah, the Rebbe. So, okay, what do you do then? So, okay, so you're right, maybe you don't have to escort it the whole way because you can knock over 10 people on the way, but something, few steps, right? What does it say? It's coming up in the next few parshas, Balak, right? It had a big schus for just walking a few steps, the Daros, for kavod. So ideally, the process, the procedure should be, and since most people don't necessarily practice this, there should be room for more people to do it after hearing the share. But ideally, the process should be is not just a person standing in place, but really sort of moving towards the Sefer Torah and escorting it to the Aron. That's unto itself. Yes.
So I don't see this in practice anymore. Maybe there are some shuls where they do it. But when I was a kid growing up, I remembered the person who had psicha opened the Aron, and then when the Chazan took the Torah, the person walked behind them, and even putting the Torah back, they would stay behind the Torah until they go up, and then go over and open the Aron.
So I have a good idea, right? Mr. Barfield saying he remembered this as years ago as a kid. This is the practice people did, but nowadays even the person who does psicha doesn't do that. So I have a good idea. You should tell the gabbai that he should instruct the guy doing psicha. This is part of the process. You open the aron. This is how you open the strings and this. You give it to the chazan, and your job's not finished. And then you escort him. The guy say, "Oh, that's for the rabbi to do," and shake the hands.
I have a hard enough time getting him to just pull the string right.
Right. Okay. We know the feeling. But this is an important, it's a halacha. It's brought down again. Rabbi Reisman made a point. I remember hearing this from years ago. That's a kedai halacha for people to know and to practice. And then there's a second part, which is connected, but it's really unconnected. The last line of that Ramah writes, "V'yesha kasvu, shemeviim atinokos." You bring little kids to shul at this point. Now, I'm not sure it means you keep them in shul for laning. Maybe not. But v'yesha kasvu, shemeviim atinokos l'nashik haTorah. You bring the little kids to shul to kiss the Sefer Torah. K'dei l'chanechem mezarz b'mitzvahs. To be mechanech them and be mezarz them in mitzvahs. V'chei nogin. And I could say on this, V'chei nogin. This you do see, Baruch Hashem. People still bring their kids to kiss the Sefer Torah. Now, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't comment on this, but Dirshu does bring down over here that they bring from earlier sources that the minhag to kiss the Sefer Torah is not just for ketanim, little kids. It's even gedolim should kiss the Sefer Torah when it passes before them. They bring from the Siddur Yavitz brings us down. The Kaf HaChaim for the Svardim bring down Shekenoi Nog Minhag HaRizal, covers Hasidim too. So really the idea of kissing a Sefer Torah is not limited to little kids, but it's for other people too. They bring from the Chazon Ish that not only the Chazon Ish kissed the Sefer Torah, he would embrace it, he would like hug it. The Nashik L'Chavik kiss the Sefer Torah. Fine. So again, this is all part of kavod and really love of the Sefer Torah. Is when the Sefer Torah comes out, one should kiss it. Now, really, for that alone, if I taught the second halach without the first, so that itself would enable the people. Okay, if I have to kiss the Sefer Torah, that means I have to walk towards it. So b'chal masai mana, you're already accomplishing that feat of people walking and coming towards the Sefer Torah, coming to the Sefer Torah to kiss it. Now they have somewhat of a discussion in the poskim, and I want to put my head amongst them over here, especially a tricky topic post the world of COVID, and people became more germaphobes than before. But there was an interesting debate. Okay, does one physically kiss the Sefer Torah with one's lips, or does one touch the Sefer Torah to his hand and his hand to his mouth? So there's an interesting discussion over there amongst poskim, and some bring up issues of germs, and perhaps it's a reason not to kiss a Sefer Torah directly. I definitely remember over COVID that this halacha was talked about, very much so. They bring down here from Shlomo Zalman that he says, that you don't have to be worried about sakana involved in the mitzvah. Okay.
This kissing do a mess. Kissing.
Yeah, but I mean during COVID, you guys,
Yeah.
I mean there was the person taking the Sefer Torah out, it was a one-man show for everything. So it was a whole other.
Yeah, and they don't come near as 4 amos. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I remember. Oh
Back
gosh.
then it was like literally everything.
Oh, now you're bringing back interesting memories. Yikes. Right. Baruch Hashem, we're past that. We should stay past that. Huh? Yeah. I heard of such things. But I think between these two sets of halachas, we do see a nice picture of how much kavod Torah should one give when the Sefer Torah comes out, in terms of standing, in all circumstances, stopping what they're doing, even when learning, the idea of escorting a Sefer Torah, kissing a Sefer Torah. These are all halachos of honoring a Sefer Torah. Now, what about that original question I posed about the Aron Kodesh moving? Now, for sure, the Sefer Torah moving, I see there's a big inyan to stand. Really, the Shiloh with Aron Kodesh is okay, but now it's sort of the Sefer Torah is resting in the Aron Kodesh, which the Aron Kodesh itself is enclosed. So maybe one does not need to stand. And I discussed this yesterday with the Posek. His first reaction was, yeah, I don't think you have to stand for that, because it's inside an Aron Kodesh. But I'll tell you where I have a little bit of a doubt. I didn't put it on the sheets, but in Siman Mem Gimel, Mishabura Chaf Hey, there the Chavetz Chaim is talking about the idea of going into a bathroom with holy things. And these things are relevant. Okay. You have something digitally on your phone, you're okay. Right? The fact it's digitally there, even if it's on the screen, I don't know. You can debate. Your screen usually shuts off. But let's say, a lot of times people carry like pocket Sefarim. So a person should be wary. They talk usually about having a double covering. So if you keep that pocket Sefer into another bag or another envelope, and you put that in your pocket, that's a double covering, and you can be good in a situation where you're stuck, you're in an airport, you have no one to watch your thing. I've just been there, right? What do? Okay, you're allowed to go in with that. The shaila is, what about Sefer Torah? Let's say you're transporting a Sefer Torah. It's you and yourself, right? And you have nowhere to leave it, and you go into the bathroom. Would one be allowed to go into a bathroom with a Sefer Torah, let's say even with a double covering?
If there's not no other option, right, you're allowed to sit on a camel.
Oh, lucky here, right? Okay, very good point. But I'll tell you what the Mishbura lights, black and white. Even in a covering, one is not allowed to go into a bathroom with the Sefer Torah. That means the covering doesn't necessarily work. So before Ephraim just said his line, so I was going to say, right? Fill in, right? We'll leave the Mishabura over there says that's okay. Right? Obviously it's better, I think one time, I don't know if I said the line to him, but I saw a nice Chabad guy sitting there, by the gate. I said, you're holding 2 pairs already. Actually, that guy was holding 4 pairs. Would you mind holding another pair? Going to the bathroom. Right? I think he legit had 4 pairs. Yeah, his 2, and he had the shlichus 2.
That's the film, right?
Yeah.
So you might ask the passerby.
Right. Anyway, thought.
2 ashes and 2 at a time.
Yeah, but there the Mishabura says a covering for a Sefer Torah wouldn't work. So I say, perhaps you see from here that even in the Aron, the Kedusha of Sefer Torah is maybe more. So maybe even if the Aron's moving and traveling, that covering, if it's moving, maybe part of the reason when it reaches the Aron we're okay is because there it's stationary. It's inside the Aron and stationary. Who says just being in the Aron is enough? So Ephraim had a good comeback. Ephraim said, but what about the halacha? If you're on a camel, you have no place to put the Sefer Torah, one be allowed to sit on it. So that means there you see that the box or the covering of the Sefer Torah does do justice to keep it in a separate spot. So perhaps one would argue, therefore, for our traveling case, that one wouldn't need to stand for it. Very good. You have to ask. I'm not sure, final psak halacha, but I want to end off with 2 stories. One I heard, one I saw. Story that I heard as we talked about, these halachos of standing for a Sefer Torah are really learned from the halachos of standing for a Talmud Chacham. Interestingly, it really deserves its own share on Parsha. The halachos of standing for a Talmud Chacham apply not just to a Talmud Chacham, but also to his Rebbetzin, his wife. And the halachos of standing for a Talmud Chacham might even apply Acher Moso. If the Talmud Chacham passes away, it's machlokas or choice. But Eishes Chaver Kechaver, there's a tzad in the halacha, even Acher Moso. So I heard of the following Maisa. Rav Aaron Schechter was traveling somewhere by car. I believe this story happened years and years ago. I believe he was younger then. I believe the story was, I think he himself was driving. And this was in Borough Park. And somebody noticed they were driving behind. They noticed there was Rav Aaron Schechter in front of them. They're all excited. No, I'll see in a second. No. And all of a sudden, while he was driving, he pulled over, got out of his car, stood straight, and then went back in his car and drove. The person behind him was like, what is going on here? This man is driving his car, pulls over, gets out of his car, stands up like a salute, then goes back in his car and drives. So their curiosity got to them. So I don't know if they asked Rav Aaron Schechter directly. They asked Talmud. They found out that story was Rav Aaron was driving and he noticed on the street walking was Rebbetzin Kotler. Aaron Kotler is Rebbetzin. Rav Aaron Schechter actually had some shaykhs to Rav Aaron Kotler. He talked with him in the morning for long periods of time. And this is already after Rav Aaron was nifter. But he saw walking the streets of Borough Park was Rebbetzin Kotler. The Rosh Hashiva of Chaim Berlin, Talmud Rav Hutner, was a master of Kavod Torah, stopped his car. He's moving. We talked about the halacha. If you're moving, what do? You stop. He stopped his car, got out of his car, and stood als kavod for Eishes Chaver Kechaver Fil Acher Misa. I want to just end with one story. Really, this ties together both last week and this week. When I assume everyone in this room will look back and they'll know, where were you when you heard the first news that Israel attacked Iran? I happen to be standing under a chuppah where they're making the shaber for Chayalei Tzahal. Quite amazing. I didn't find out about it until moments later, but the guy gets the breaking news. Told me, you were up there, you know what happened? Okay. But in Eretz Yisrael, obviously everybody for years has been fearful of this moment. I knew it's a clear and present danger. It's really something that needs to be taken care of. And the moment came. Caught everybody by surprise.
Especially the Ayatollah.
Baruch Hashem. Halvai Viter. But you have to see the scenes. Amazing video. In the Panovich Yeshiva, the Bachrim knew where to go at such a moment. It was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. The Beis Medrash in Panovich, just were there, was packed with Bachrim. Okay, the Rebbeim, most of the Rebbeim, I'm sure, were at home, so they weren't in the Beis Medrash at 3 o'clock in the morning. But the Bachrim were all there, together with a certain tzaddik. Everyone knows is a tzaddik Rav Adas. His brother is Rosh Hashiva Parat Yosef. His father was a Rosh Hashiva Parat Yosef. And this Rav Adas is a fascinating figure. He's a big makobel. He basically sits at the kosel. He's quite interesting to notice. He wears a talus over his white shirt. No jacket, hat. He's always wearing a talus. He's always saying Tikkun Chatzos. He's always davening with such intensity. And when this happened, he ended up in Bnei Brak. He's also like one of these figures, like he knows a lot. He ends up in all the right spots. Remember, I forgot which gadol was Levi, who was there by the Kavura, leading everybody in Tefillah. So he was davening, he was leading the tzibur in Panovich on early Friday morning when the attack started. And you're davening, and he did the move. Again, on the basis, how, what, when, how, what. He went up to the Golden Aron Kodesh in Panovich, rips open the doors, Sefer Torah standing right there, and he starts screaming out to him. That was the scene, early Friday morning. Israeli bombers are on their mission there in Iran. You had holy Jew with tons of yeshiva bachrim, with the Aron Kodesh open, Golden Aron Kodesh Panovich, davening with such intensity. We appreciate what a Sefer Torah is, the cover of the Sefer Torah. Appreciate, talked about last week, the cover of Aron Kodesh. And our most, when life is on the line, that's what we go to. What do we have? Our Beis HaMikdash is where the Sefer Torah is, where the Limud Torah is. And we hope that our daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for Rachamim, and but whatever we could do is schus of Limud Torah, schus of Tefillah, as Hashem, Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael, B'chol Makom Shehem. I'll say one more line because it hit me. We had yesterday in Yeshiva, Trump's ambassador on anti-Semitism spoke, and with such amazing, I thought, foresight, spoke about obviously the dangers to the Yid in Eretz Yisrael, but he reminded everyone in the audience that there are 25,000 Jews living in Iran. 25,000 Jews are in Iran. And it's a dangerous situation for them too. Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael, think about that, right? He said the lines too. It's true in Russia and Ukraine also, right? That's the definition of Galus. It's not the good guys versus the bad guys. We're in Galus. Jews are sprinkled throughout the entire world. On the Russian side, on the Ukrainian side, on the Israeli side, but also on the Iranian side. And we have to mispalel, should come the day that Kadosh Baruch Hu gathers us all together, and we should be zocheh to the Gula Shlema b'meir of Yemenu. Amen. Thank you very much for listening. As Hashem, next week we'll be off. Little summer break for a week, but hope to be back here week after.